You mentioned regulation, and one of the very interesting issues for those who are following this closely, as you know, is the question of how much we're going to regulate versus legislate. And a lot of environmentalists say, thanks to the Supreme Court decision, which you mentioned, thanks to your own ruling that carbon emissions represent a danger to human life, along with other chemicals, that you've got everything you need to regulate right now. And they say that what you should do, a lot of environmentalists anyway, is say no to any new permitting of coal plants and start finding the dirty coal that's out there that's spewing a lot of bad carbon. You prepared to do that?
I'm prepared to uphold the law. I'm prepared to do my job. I feel very strongly that the Supreme Court case wasn't something that was optional.
Well, let's start. So are you prepared to say, are you saying that you'd say no to new coal plants?
No, we haven't made that determination yet. We'll make it through rulemaking, the way we're supposed to do.
What does that mean?
That means we'll propose a rule. We'll talk about what best available control technology is for new sources. And there are some pretty interesting debates over what that means in terms of how new facilities are fired and also what that means for their emissions.
Going to get harder to license a new coal plant?
It's hard now.
Going to get harder than what it is?
It's pretty hard now. I mean, listen, it's not that I'm not taking the bait.
She's
it's
good,
that,
you know.
No, you know, we live, the world we live in right now is that there are literally, I think, dozens of plants that
But there are people who say, just stop them, unplug them. I mean, you've got people who go to jail in front of the coal-fired plant here in Washington because they're protesting saying no more coal.
So
we've got an industry representative here, though, who said that would be a dumb way to go because you got to light the lights.
Well, and you do have to light it, and coal is cheap right now because there isn't a price on carbon and there's not a price on some of the other pollution associated with coal. What I've said is that we certainly need to work on the clean end of the clean coal equation. I think we have some technological challenges before we can say that. But I think it's important to know where we are right now. Industry is at the table. Many progressive industries are at the table because right now their permits are being held up or they can't get financing. They can't get somebody to give them the capital to build a 600 megawatt coal-fired power plant because they know there's a belief that a price on carbon is coming. Hopefully it'll be through legislation. And when that happens, how can you make a smart investment decision?
Are you worried that the bills that are moving, the House bill that's already passed and the Senate bill that may come, is going to dilute your ability, the EPA's ability to regulate?
No, you know what, we're trying to get to the same point. This is not about who gets it done. I certainly have my own designs on the future, and you know, being king of the world, queen of the world is awesome. But that's not actually going to get us there. It's too easy for me to list, and I bet any environmentalist in this audience who works on these policies can list the problems we would have in a totally regulatory future. Listen, it was the Clean Air Act and our discussions about acid rain that led us to the idea of how you can use markets to incentivize the kind of behavior you want. It's normally a pretty free market idea to take the market and make it work in your favor. We're in a pretty politicized environment now, and so some of our discussions never get that far. But this isn't about who does it. I know there'll be a role for EPA in any future. You know, we're the keeper of the emissions inventory, of the reporting. We're going to have lots to say about the state permits or state programs that'll implement new laws. So I know we'll be there. I just think we have to get started.
Do you think that, and having Lindsey Graham on board for the Senate package is very important, especially given the intensely partisan atmosphere in Washington now. We think about the health care legislation reform that passed with no Republican support. Does this mean that there's going to be bipartisan support for this?
Well, I hope so. You know, I think he's laid that out as something that he believes would be good. And I think if you look at the history of environmental and big legislation that this country has tackled, and it's been a while since we tackled the really big stuff, and that's not a good thing. I think just in general on the trajectory of these issues, it's been bipartisan. It's been overwhelmingly bipartisan. And I think for this country to, you talked earlier about behavior and sort of everybody understanding that we've decided to go for another moon launch here, and we're going to move to cleaner energy, and we're going to take the time to transition properly, and we're going to train people in how to do it and set it as a national goal. It'd be better for it to be apolitical, if not bipartisan.
If there's no bill,
Shame on you, Frank.
Shame on me for even imagining such a thing, right? If Washington is Washington and there's no bill, then what? How does America take the lead on climate in the world?
I think it's harder. I do. I think that the world is watching. I don't think that's an overstatement. I think that we will continue to uphold and do our job at EPA.
Can you do it without legislation?
We can do some things, potentially without legislation. I do think we're looking at a future where we'll be sued. That's not entirely unusual for EPA. But I also don't think it'll be the kind of economy-wide quick price on carbon that'll allow us to move as quickly as we could. It will be a lost opportunity, and not one, if it doesn't happen, I can't believe I just said that, but if it doesn't happen, I don't think, when I look out at an audience of young people, I know that this is coming. But how long is the question?
There's a Gallup survey here. I don't know how many of you have seen this. It's fascinating. It's a new one. It says Americans prioritize energy over environment for the first time. And it shows real shifting attitudes. Another one of their surveys, when they were asking about climate change specifically, showed the numbers of people who thought climate change was real, way down, who believed the science, way down, presumably because of these emails and some of this other stuff. What's going on? Why is public support appearing to go south on something that is so fundamental to the United States of America, the world, and this administration, apparently?
I think there's a lot of time and effort put into influencing public opinion. And government doesn't always do that well. I
So
know.
You blame the media?
I don't blame the media. I really don't. But I think that this is complex science. I mean, I'm a scientist by training, and I don't try to sit down and make myself an expert on climate science. This is a case of models that are complex, trying to predict a future where there are many variables. What I usually say to folks is that this isn't, this isn't a puzzle where it makes no sense. This is a puzzle where every time we learn something, we get another piece in the puzzle, and it's still, it's like that game where you try to figure out what it is quickly. That's what scientists are doing. And, the vast majority of the data line up in an incredibly concise way to show you that all this CO2 and CO2-like materials, these greenhouse gases we're just pumping into the atmosphere, are having an impact on our atmosphere. It's deteriorating. And if we don't do something, something will change. That being said, I think when we see this climate bill, we're going to hear a lot of talk about jobs and national security. I just got back from South Carolina, and lots of talk from the business community about their need for certainty. They feel stifled. They feel as though, as they're poised to recover from this recession, that we've gotten ourselves into a bit of a Gordian knot in terms of energy and how we're going to
You raised this. You just got back from South Carolina. So there's Lindsey Graham, your guy in the climate bill, in the South Carolina's homepage, an online publication. Graham challenges EPA leaders' claims. Senator Lindsey Graham fired off a letter Monday to the Environmental Protection Agency seeking a list of South Carolina businesses that would be affected by rules to control global warming pollution. Upset by remarks by EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson, I think that's you, in Columbia, Graham said he remains unconvinced that pending greenhouse gas regulations will affect only large industries. Have you talked to him?
No, I haven't spoken to him since. And listen, we've already talked about the important work he's doing. I do not want anything to come between him and all the work he's doing on this legislation right now. This climate bill is incredibly important in terms of our ability to move forward. And I could have a long, wonky discussion about how I believe we can move on regulation, but it starts with one simple statement, which I said all over South Carolina too, which is I want legislation. I prefer legislation. I joined the president in calling for legislation. I believe it's more efficient. I believe economy-wide legislation puts a price on carbon quicker. I don't relish the idea of endless litigation, and I don't think it will unleash the kind of innovation that would be transformative.
So Lindsey Graham should chill and not worry.
I would never tell a U.S. Senator to chill.